So for our third and final session of the day, the topic is best practices in solar rooftop. I would invite on stage our chairperson, Mr. Rakesh Kumar, Program Director and Senior Consultant, International Solar Alliance. I would now invite for the keynote address, Mr. P.R. Kumar, CEO, BSES-Yamuna Power Limited, India. Let me now invite our panel of speakers, Mr. Pradeep Menon, Head Technical Strategy, Havells Solar India. Mr. Daniel Lepori, CEO, Designergy, SA, Switzerland. And Ms. Shubhra Mohanka, Director, Gautam Solar Private. Sorry about the, really sorry. Really sorry about the last one change, sir. I would now request Honorable Chairperson to convene the session.
आपको पता नहीं था, सबको तो पता था यहाँ पे, मैम को भी पता था।
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In this session, we are discussing about best practices in rooftop solar. We have a very distinguished panel. Mr. P.R. Kumar, CEO, BSES-Yamuna Power Limited is with us. Mr. Pradeep Menon from Havells Solar. Then Mr. Daniel Lepori and Mr. Mohanka. Well, a little bit of background. Of course, there have been other sessions as well on rooftop. In fact, I had the opportunity to run the rooftop program for the national program with Ministry of New and Renewable Energy when I was earlier with Solar Energy Corporation of India as director. Our program started sometimes in 2013. And for the first time, we had introduced this concept of competitive procurement of rooftop solar. Because in many of the countries, of course, these were attempted somewhere else, but it was mostly based on feed-in tariff. And Germany was the leader, which very often we used to share with our participants. And wherever there was an awareness program, we will talk about the Germany's program, because they had had a very effective program through feed-in tariff. So when we started in 2013, it was with a small idea that we will do with 10 megawatt of competitive procurement. And the idea was to create awareness. So we started with major cities in India: Delhi, Kolkata, Mumbai, Chennai. And as we moved forward and ministry gave some more programs to us, we started covering tier 1 cities and then tier 2 cities. And today I believe we are, of course, touched or crossed more than 75 cities and towns in the country. The business model, the two business models are basically there. One is CapEx model, and there was earlier some subsidy scheme. And there have been changes in subsidy scheme in the sense that in the beginning, subsidy of 30% was available across the board. But going forward, industry and commercial segment, the subsidy was withdrawn. And now it's primarily residential sector and also some institutions, schools and hospitals. Means social sector have some element of subsidy. Now, as we started and over the period 3.5 years or 4 years of work, the ecosystem has got developed in the country, and not only RESCO models and CAPEX models are going forward, but then new players have come, manufacturing has gone up. And it is not just because of rooftop, because solar in general, including utility scale projects. In solar, we have already, India has achieved about more than 1200 megawatt of rooftop. And when I was checking with my own company, because I left them about a year or two back, so they have already done 200 megawatt, SECI's contribution. And going forward by June, they will be achieving another 50 megawatt. So most of the initiatives have been through the private players. And in one of the schemes, we ensured that even small players should be a part of the ecosystem. Because there were big players in the beginning, and you will find 10, 15, 20 kind of players who were participating in the tender. Going forward, we opened up the sector a little bit, and it resulted in more than 100 new players, new entrepreneurs who have also become the part of the scheme. One of the IEA study was saying that if you look at the projections by 2050, the rooftop program is going to be one of the most important segment if we have to scale up solar. And its proportion will be the highest, even it will be more than the utility scale projects. There have been some barriers as well. Our key speaker from BSES will be sharing his views on rooftop. But the distribution companies, it took a little time for them to come on board. Of course, in last 2 years or so, the private utilities, mostly the distribution companies have also come forward. But there are skepticism in many parts that whether it will be affecting their own business. So whole lot of awareness and sensitization is required. Of course, the policy front and regulatory front is also very, very important, and we believe that we have come out with a fairly good regulation and policy. And going forward, we have to work more on capacity building side also. And when we talk about best practices, naturally, we have to see the entire value chain and how we can bring better, because everything can be done better than it is being done. So, and little bit I will also talk about, before I give it to the honorable panelists, International Solar Alliance. Many of you are aware, it is an intergovernmental body, and with its headquarters in India. It was launched on 30th of November 2015 on the sidelines of Paris Agreement. An imagination of our Indian Prime Minister, and then French came on board, and then the framework agreement of International Solar Alliance was opened for signing in Paris, where the Secretary General of United Nations was also present. And I'm happy to share with this audience that today we have 64 countries who have signed the ISA framework agreement. The broad idea is that the countries which are falling either partially or fully between Tropic of Capricorn and Tropic of Cancer, they are all the prospective countries. And they are 121 in numbers. The provision is also to have partner countries, and there are some issues that the partner countries don't have the voting rights. So some discussions and negotiations are taking place with many countries. So out of 121 prospective countries who can be the member of ISA, we have already reached 64, the latest addition being the Netherlands, who signed about 2 days back. And 33 countries have ratified the framework agreement, which means that International Solar Alliance, there was a provision that 15 countries, when they ratify, this institution will become a legal institution. So it happened on 6th of December 2017, and many of you must have been following that on 11th of March, the founding ceremony of ISA happened in Delhi, where the French President, Honorable French President, our Indian Prime Minister was present. And many of the head of states of various countries participated. And there was a roadmap also, which we call Delhi Declaration on Solar, where we have all committed to scale up solar in all those member countries. Now, we have launched many programs, but Rooftop program is also one of the flagship program of International Solar Alliance, just for the benefit of my colleagues and also for the audience. And this rooftop, scaling up rooftop solar was launched on 11th of March 2018. And we have also been working because any program, if it has to be successful, then the entire ecosystem has to be looked at. And we have to share the best practices which is happening, be it in harmonizing the tender, be it in harmonizing the policies, because there are different countries with different level of understanding, different level of policy intervention. In many countries, there are no independent solar policy. It is subsumed in the RE policy or in the power policy. So we have to see all this, and as we move forward, there has to be a rooftop policy and how we are going to do it. So on the front of policy, regulation, so all those best practices, when we are discussing about best practices in rooftop, we have to talk about the entire value chain of what could be and how we can share that knowledge. Many of the things which has happened across the world, we are not saying what India has learned. We have definitely done some part, but there are many parts where a lot of good things are happening. So can we assimilate all those good practices and try to make this program successful? Our program is for 5 years duration, and it is irrespective of whether it is grid connected or off grid. It is technology agnostic. We are working on all the segments, as I told, means we are also working with the member countries to develop right policy and regulation. Also, we are working on capacity building on rooftop. You may have heard about PSD, USAID, a lot of programs were run by them on rooftop, which was targeted to entrepreneurs, it was targeted to bankers, it was targeted to distribution companies, so that there is a better awareness and also public at large. And we have to work together with the industry, with government, with regulators to make the rooftop program a success across the world. And all this sharing of best practices will definitely go a long way in scaling up rooftop solar across the member countries of ISA and also the partner countries of ISA. With this opening remark, now I will request the keynote speaker from BSES, Mr. P.R. Kumar, to share his thoughts on this. And if there is a presentation, he can go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Session Chair. And very good afternoon to all of you. The Session Chair has given a very illuminating opening remark. The solar has picked up in the country, and in last 4 years, the solar addition has been really great in our country. Rooftop solar, the program was launched, a target was given, 40 gigawatt has to come from rooftop solar. And all the stakeholders were roped in, Ministry of Renewable Energy, Ministry of Power, all the stakeholders worked together. Yes, I agree. There were some initial hesitation in the minds of the distribution company that if there is a large-scale solar infusion in the system, it is going to take away the business of a distribution company. But over a period of time, there is a growing realization among the distribution companies that ultimately this is happening for the good of the mankind, good for the people. There are large number of forces working. The prices has come down, and now the solar prices are comparable to the, in fact, it is lower than the fossil fuel sources. The concerns about the environment, concerns about the pollution, the Paris Agreement, all these drove the country towards increased solar penetration, and solar rooftop was a part of that. In our distribution company, which is catering the need of 1.7 million customers in the central and East Delhi, continuously the customers are engaged and customers are made aware about what are the advantages of the solar rooftop, and that it has resulted into 13 megawatt addition in our area. uh, in about less than 3-4 years' time. On the policy side, the Regulatory Commission has been very, very forward-looking, and they have included that any solar generation in the area shall be counted in the RPO obligation of the utility. Means you are not investing anything, but if the solar is there in your area, it will be counted in a RPO obligation. And if you are not meeting your RPO obligation, then you are penalized. So then there have been a program of, as Rakesh ji told, that 30% subsidy for domestic and the institutional customer. Later, the institutional customer has been taken away, and then there is a program called Srishti. The government is already working on that. So there is a large number of awareness, large number of vendors are working on that. And we are quite hopeful that, yes, once the solar rooftop will pick up, it will pick up very fast. The consumer are very smart. They know which is the cheaper option. And Indian customers, when they will go after this, they will go in a big way. But there are, of course, there are certain constraints also. The size of the roof available in the cities like Delhi, and particularly in an area like us, in the east and the central part of Delhi, their roof sizes are very, very small. And the solar, it takes about 10 meters square for 1 kilowatt solar generation. So because today most of the consumers have a load, single phase customers have load in the range of 2 to 5 kilowatt. So for generating this amount of power, they need a huge, huge space. That's not available. I will call upon all the R&D organization. How can we increase the footprint of the solar so that compact solar can come and compact solar can give the yield which is required for a small family. Other thing is that multiple families are 3-4 dwelling units are there on the single plot. Suppose it is a 100 square yard plot, there are 3-4 families are living. And solar and the roof rights are not exclusive. Sometimes the roof rights are divided. So actually, all the 4 has to collaborate with each other to put a generating station, solar station. Once all the 4 will realize the benefit of this, they will collaborate and they will give the rooftop so that the solar plant is established over there. The third challenge which we are encountering is the roof. The people have traditionally no space, public space for holding parties and all. In many colonies and all, we are seeing that the roofs are used for holding the small parties and all. They don't want to part away with the roof permanently. They want that there are water storage tanks also. So availability of rooftop space is putting a constraining factor in big takeaway of the solar rooftop. That is holding back the increased penetration of the solar rooftop. And here the technology, because the solar is basically a technology driven thing. The prices have come down in the solar sector primarily because the technology has improved. If the technology can bring in with a small footprint PV cells, then of course it will take a further leap. The funding and all, of course there are ESCO model available, but still there are anxieties in the ESCO developers. 25-year, how I am going to pay it back, whether I am going to pay it back or not. If the big institutions are behind that, they are comfortable. That's why what we are seeing in our area, that out of 50% and more is coming in the institutional sector. DMRC, railways, school, the rooftops are coming over there. But on individual household, the rooftop is still a very, very low in number. But regulator has, Delhi regulator were one of the first to bring in the net metering regulation. And here, whatever you generate, if you are able to supply to the grid, that will be adjusted as per the average power purchase cost at the end of the year. And last year also we have paid money to the different people who have ventured to install the solar installations over their roof. So there are good things happening in the ecosystem. Ecosystem is being built, and I am quite hopeful that over a period of time it will pick up. And I am particularly excited to see that large number of young entrepreneurs are working on this solar system. And India is a unique country. Indian problem will be solved by the Indian entrepreneur. And I'm quite hopeful that they will be able to find some good solutions suited for our requirement. Who knows that next Flipkart come from the solar sector in our country. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you. I will have some observation, but let us first hear all our panelists before I intervene. So let me request Mr. Menon from Havells to give his point of view.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. And thank you for the organizers for inviting and being part of such an elite panel. Since our discussion is primarily focused on the best practices of rooftop systems, and that's a growing market, and unlike the utility scale, where we have a lot of very professional installation and commissioning partners and integrators, the rooftop being an emerging segment has got a mix. There are some very good established integrators who execute the projects, while at the same time there's a smaller integrators, and which we need, like Mr. P.R. Kumar said, because the entrepreneurial push is needed to really drive this industry. In any solar system, you see what the earlier panelists in the earlier discussion also mentioned, that the main objective is to get the maximum yield. Well, I think the main objective is to get the maximum yield throughout the 25 years of life, right? So because that is what, whether it's a RESCO model or a CapEx model, end of the day, the objective is, or the return on the investment that the consumer makes is, or investor makes, is basically, directly linked to the kind of energy yield that he can get. In our observation, we have seen that, there are some few basic elements, if are taken right at the beginning and considered, this can be to a great extent achieved. Design of the system, basically forms a very strong fundamental especially in the rooftop business. Getting the right selection of the components, getting a right physical layout can also directly impact, the hygiene, like some panelists mentioned, in the installation and commissioning, which can drastically reduce your downtime. And also in the O&M, we have many times found that the installation and commissioning hygiene that we talk about, is at times practically not very viable when you really visit some sites because of the kind of physical layouts and array layouts that have been designed. Sometimes designs are made just to kind of push to the maximum kind of capacity, and you find that, the installer at either end of the roof, especially in slant roofs, when he's either putting the first row or the last row, whichever way he starts, the crew is sitting on the previous row of the panels, and they do not realize it that, they are maybe, kind of creating things like micro cracks in the modules, which can, in the long term, be a big deterrent and help achieving the maximum kind of yields. So the right kind of spacing, because panels are connected in series, and if any one panel is damaged, the entire array is going to be giving the output of that lowest panel in the string. So this is a major constraint, and over a period of time, when you study systems, working for more than 5 years, you find that, these kind of faults, which are maybe not physically visible at the stage, but develop and, kind of get enhanced over a period of time, can be a big mitigating factor in, getting the maximum yield. There again, while you're designing a system, kind of making the right kind of physical layouts where ease of installation, ease of O&M maintenance. Sometimes we find, panels towards the higher end are not as clean as the ones towards the lower, where it's easy to access. Because, they have been too cramped. Maybe you have 4 rows of panels, and you find the first 2 rows much cleaner than the, the other 2 rows. This again leads to much lower yield over a period of time, and it would have been better maybe to have maybe a 10 or 15% lower capacity system operating at a full, capacity, rather than having, ending up paying for more kilowatts in the initial stage, but not able to extract the maximum kind of power. The other aspect that I would like to emphasize is on the, the balance of system, like the earlier panelists also said. Because of the pricing constraints, there has been a tendency to sometimes, shortchange, on some basic components, the kind of sizing of the cables. At times we find maybe a slightly, an extra size of the cable would have actually resulted in lesser drop and higher yield at the inverter level. The interconnects using slightly substandard connectors has been found, to cause a lot of small short circuits and, loose connections, which again, have led to a lot of higher downtime. Most people install solar systems, but the initial enthusiasm to, keep monitoring these systems, wanes away with time. Especially when you're talking of, middle-level industries and plants. They do not have that kind of a dedicated manpower who is continuously monitoring these systems for achieving the higher levels. Today there are much better remote monitoring and monitoring systems available. The technology has evolved where you can even have, even module level data. But like I said, the general trend that we have observed is after maybe the first 6 months, 8 months, the focus on the plant is not as intense as it was, right after it was installed. And, even the frequency of maybe the customers calling up the system supplier or the integrators, kind of drops. But these are, very critical to maintain the system, and keep it up and running, especially in our kind of Indian environment where, the atmosphere is not very conducive. It is very dusty, especially in the north. There are some areas where we have seen that, even a 4-day frequency of cleaning of modules is necessary. Otherwise, you see a sharp drop of about 20-25% of, the yield coming down. We have our own factory in Faridabad where we had installed a 100 kilowatt system where within a week we see a drop of almost 30-40%, if the panel's on. It's kind of a grime. Fortunately, now the BTPS plant is shut down, so you don't have that fly ash, coming and settling on the modules. So it was white. On one look at it, you don't think, the panel is dirty, but it's a very white, thick layer. And especially when the weather changes in the October to November and there is condensation on the panels and dew settling, by morning, it is like a very thick grime, and really the energy output goes low. So O&M is something that, also can be, it should be made in the design stage itself, something that is easy, so that, the technicians can access and maintain the system. And like I said, for the installation and commissioning as well, it is very important that when a designer is making the physical layouts, proper access to the roof and other facilities are there. Availability of, water jets, whatever is required on the roof, because these become deterrents. And it's very important that these aspects as well, apart from selecting the right inverter or the right module, because by default, these components, being about 75 or 80% of the cost, the focus is primarily at any project level. There's so much of discussion on the selection of the module, the selection of the inverter, but not so much on the balance aspects. So from our experience, we have seen that if these things are right at the stage where an integrator or providing a system design can incorporate and make it a regular habit, that and also these things come from doing an initial detailed site survey, which we feel kind of is not something greatly emphasized on. We have seen undersized cables from the inverter to the LT panel because they did not calculate the distance right, and you have much higher voltage drops. So these are all basically defeating your purpose of putting up a solar plant and trying to achieve a low cost energy. So this is what I would like to stress on, that these few things based fundamentally on the design aspects, if they can be made like a best practice and a standard SOP, I think we can get much higher yields from all the rooftop plants. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Menon, for giving a very good insight into the importance of O&M and system design and sizing. I will also be sharing something on this, some good practices. But before that, let me move to Mr. Mohanka. You have some presentation or? Yeah, please go ahead. Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
No issues. Hello, I am Gautam Mohanka from Gautam Solar. We've been in solar for about 20 years now, and we've seen many ups and downs in the solar industry. We've seen a lot of good installations, a lot of bad installations. So first, I'll talk about, I'll skip a lot of my presentation because sir has given me a time limit of only 5 minutes, which is not enough to cover the whole sector. But basically, I want to first talk about the customer, because see, in the solar rooftop sector, when we talk about one is getting the installation right, getting the solar panels right, getting all those things right. But the most difficult part of the rooftop industry is actually getting the customer. Because the customer today, he is not interested in buying solar. The customer is looking at investing his money in the right place and getting enough returns from his investment. And convincing the customer that it is the right investment for him is very, very difficult. Now I'll tell you why. Because see, solar energy is not the energy that he's looking at. He's looking at returns from investments. Number one. Number two, his energy requirement, can you meet all his energy requirement from solar energy? In most of the cases, if he has the rooftop space, still you are not able to meet all of his energy requirement from solar. So energy efficiency is something else that he could be looking at. So it's very, very important to understand your customer requirement. Number three in this understanding the customer part is that in case you tell your customer that you're putting up a grid connected solar rooftop, and the solar system will not be working in case of a power failure, he's surprised and shocked. Because he says that I put up the solar system to produce energy, and when the requirement is most, then at that point of time, I'm not getting any energy from solar systems. So you have to make your customer aware that it is not a solar energy backup option, but an energy saver option. You're saving on an electricity bill. That is what we're offering with the grid connected option. In the same context, I would suggest that people should offer a battery-based system also as an option to the customer. Allow him to choose. We should not force upon a customer to buy only a grid-connected system. A backup option could be a good solution. A partial backup system could also be provided in the same spirit. Now, when we go to a customer, a lot of cases he's still building up his factory, he's still building up his premises. In that case, involving the architects could also be a good idea. because in that case, we could talk about the rooftop orientation at the preliminary stage itself. Otherwise, we go and we find the rooftop orientation to be east-west, in which case we have lost an opportunity. We have done with this with our customer, and we found this to be a very, very as in useful thing to talk about. Now, on the actual installation, I say that site survey, as sir was saying, is a very, very important part of the whole exercise. Is one of the most undermined part of the whole rooftop installation. But site survey, I'll say, is the most crucial part, because where the system is going to be put up, what time of the day is shading going to be there, those things are very, very important. And we have to look at, as sir from BSES was talking about, that in most of the cases there's water tanks on roofs, there could be mobile towers on roof, there could be gensets on roof, people could be using that for hosting a party. So in most of the cases, not enough space is there, and if we do not plan for that, in that case again we face a huge difficulty. So site survey is number one, understanding the customer, number two, and also we have to look at, solar panels are very important, solar cables are important, all those inverters are important, but civil work is, I'll say, the most important part of it, because we have heard in recent times, we would have all seen videos of solar panels flying away and they being handled like kites in air. So those are because of two problems. One is that one of your structure issue, you have not, the people have not put up the right steel structures. And number two, the foundation, installation, commissioning, civil work was not proper. In case we do both of these properly, then we would not face such huge issues. Now, in this case, we've seen, we're showing some options about how to go about doing installation and commissioning. We're basically a solar panel manufacturer, so installation commissioning we do for our own projects, but I thought it would be a good idea to share with people. So marking is very important, chipping, anchor fastening, all those things. And then in a case of Mr. Kumar was talking about that people host parties on rooftop. In that case, we could use use the raised rooftop design. In this case, we've used the foundation pillars of the building. We've raised the rooftop to an optimum height so that the space below can be utilized in a place like Delhi. So more area could be covered, more installation, normally you could have put only about 80 kilowatt. We managed to put about 100 kilowatt in that area. And the customer is now using that to host a lot of parties, which we sometimes are invited to, sometimes not. So, but foundation pillars, there's another advantage to this. The load of the structure and the solar panels are passed down directly to the foundation of the building. And there's no load on the actual roof plate. Plus, since we are not penetrating the roof plate, there's no chance of water leakage also. So, this could be another idea of putting this up. Now, another point that we should keep in mind is we should plan for our warranties. In case something goes wrong, if we have imported all this stuff, we've imported all this stuff from, let's say, China, then how do we take care of our warranties? How do you get your solar panels replaced? How do you get your inverters replaced? Is there somebody standing behind you who is willing to do that? That is very, very important, because 25 years is a long period of time. And in case you do not plan for it, in case customer comes asking, then what do you do? So that's, warranty planning is again very, very important. That's, I think, most of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for the insights. And now I request Mr. Daniel Lepori from Switzerland. Since we had most of the experience of India, and you are talking from Switzerland, so you have 10 minutes time. We would like to hear and learn more from you. Thank you.
3 minutes of jet lag. Thank you so much. Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having us here, Designergy. We are really appreciating this opportunity. And from what I heard so far, there are incredible chances to work in this market and also to work with local people. So what is Designergy exactly doing? Here you can see one of the biggest plans we have done so far in Switzerland. On the left side, you can see the typical approach. Okay, so as Mr. Gautam was mentioning before, you have a roof, you come with a system, you put the system on top. This is perfect when the roof is kind of okay, it is well insulated, there is no water problems. Then there is a further approach. Maybe the most outer part has a problem. So, for example, the tile or other most external materials, and you can substitute it with a BIPV, Building Integrated Photovoltaic Module, a little bit like the Tesla tile, okay? But of course that most of the time comes with an up price that not everybody wants to pay. And we know, I heard it very well, India is very price sensitive. So we went a step further, and I think that makes really sense. We integrate everything, basically almost from what you can see in the ceiling up to the solar panel. Why this? Well, we heard many of the problems before. Most of the buildings are very, very badly thermally insulated, okay? So what that means, in Switzerland, of course, we have a problem that it's very cold in the winter, you're wasting a lot of heating energy, while here in India, I mean, look at this building. Here, I don't know what's the consumption in air conditioning, but if the building would just be slightly, I'm not saying like Switzerland, slightly better insulated, this could still lead to use the solar energy to make the air conditioners work, but maybe there would be other energy that could be used for more intelligent things, like, for example, running a bus, like you all saw here outside, because it doesn't make sense to make a solar bus, sorry, an electric bus, and then build up somewhere else a coal plant. I mean, this is simply a no-go, okay? So then we went further. We've seen all these problems, assembly on the roof, Switzerland, Germany, all this. It's always the same problem. I had yesterday my guys installing in Germany. They were calling me that the guy forgot the hammer, the other one the screwdriver. I mean, and so the idea is really to work on a pre-assembled base so that when things come in place on the roof or on the construction side, things can be put on the roof, on the structure or whatever, like an IKEA for professionals. It must be easy, simple, fast. People don't have to think, they have to act, and they can act fast. There are further advantages. I'm going to skip a little bit. As you can see, it goes directly from the fab to the roof. The modules, our modules, are step-proof. They don't make microcracks with a very, very interesting system that we have multiply patented. This is very important because you cannot expect from somebody that is on a roof and moving around on a roof. I've been there. It's not easy, okay? And, you know, expect that he doesn't put never a feet on the panel. It's difficult. So this person needs a chance to at least, in some cases, do it. Then what's going on if you have to do maintenance? How can you clean? How can you go on a roof and check if you cannot walk on it? Are you going to leave 30 centimeters between each module because you want to be able to step on it? It also doesn't make that much sense. Fire safety. We have total fire safety because we use fireproof materials. Hail resistance, hurricane, okay, as we were hearing, modules flying around. We have snow loads. We have one module that withstands 10 meters of snow compression strength. Of course, here you don't need that. You need probably more hurricane safety. There are so many features that are really important because when you're doing exchanging a roof, and here is the example. On the left, you can see the roof, which was made of asbestos, which, by the way, it's a big problem in Switzerland, in India as well. Asbestos is basically a cancer, a tumor, free in the air, okay? And after many years, by the way, that roof that you see, they just had a hailstorm. A week before we needed to start the renovation, they had holes like this, like tennis balls. They have to fix it with tape. So what if we were not changing? So it's a huge problem. It gets brittle. And most important, the operations underneath in this factory had to be shut down for 2 weeks. So who is paying then for that problems? So that's why the idea is really make it simple, make it fast. As you can see here, the planning was 9 months. We actually did it in a little bit less than 6 months than what the architect was planning. Usually on the construction site, it's exactly the opposite. Everything is running above cost, everything is running above time, and so on. On top of that, here you can see some, we have better rear ventilation. We have a lighting system integrated so that if you are in a region that is particularly affected or you have regulations that need it, you can just earth it on the side and everything is earthed. Here we've done a few other installations. Sorry, I get back to the previous one, which is interesting also for utilities. In this case, the guy that needed to replace the roof, we brought him the utility to the table. The utility made the investment, so the guy basically got the roof for free. So he's now got more value in his building, so basically he's freed up his bankability. So when he's doing his operations, because his real estate object is value more money, he can go to the bank and grab more money to run his operations. So this is why quality is really important. We tested the modules on double certification periods. One certification usually is around 20 years. So the idea is that, and we have a perfect example in Lugano where we are, we have the first 10 kilowatt system connected to the grid in 1981, okay? 1981, 37 years. It's still on the roof and it's still producing 70% of the initial production. Of course, it was experimental, it's been well maintained, and so on and so on. But the point is, this thing is still producing. So why is everybody making war to get the last 0.5% less on the capex if after 5 or 8 years you can take your solar panels and throw them away? While if you did everything correctly from the first instance, you have a real continuous return on investment. So it's absolutely something that has to be thought of. And on top of that, this is why I think real estate is the biggest. When you go to a bank and want money, the money wants guarantees, okay? Money always give you money, but they want to see that you have money, okay? And if you have something to guarantee, something that is worth, and if a real estate building is worth 10% of its value because it's gone soar after 10 years, the bank is going to give you nothing. If it's still worth 90%, 80%, 100% maybe, because maybe, you know, the land went up in value and so on, you are bankable again. But you already paid everything back because the modules is still producing 90, 95% of the initial value. So this is really what should make the big, big difference. And in India, you have a chance. And we would love to participate in helping find the right regulations, because the idea of putting the pillars on top, it's great. When something is already insulated well, it's a great idea. But because you add value to that real estate. If somebody has a very, very old roof, what you do? You come up, you put some screws, and after 3 years, water is coming in. What are you doing? Who is paying? Was it the solar guy? Was it the roofer, the engineer? And then a big dance is starting of who was wrong. And finally, who's paying? The owner. And that's a big problem, too. So I will just try to finish up. This is another project within near Bern with the biggest Swiss utility, BKW. Sorry, big for Swiss people is very small for India, but we try to do our best. This is basically a picture. Then also interesting, I heard before about batteries. So this is a garage that you see now for 3 electric vehicles, okay, with the battery put inside. This battery, basically, when the cars are not there, gets charged up during the day. When the cars get there in the night, they recharge. Well, in the first year, the 3 electric cars could drive altogether 40,000 kilometers with a saving of $8,000 over petrol, maintenance, because you basically have no maintenance, insurance reduction, and so on. So it's really fascinating. And of course, this is super easily scalable. We have this partnership with Sun to Wheel, and we are really looking forward to do this. So let's get to the end. In India, as we said, in Switzerland, we have thousands of buildings that need to be renovated. In India, it's going to be 1,000 times more. And what are we looking here in India? Well, first of all, we're doing a first pilot with our operations based in Mumbai. We have here our India partners sitting over there. And this is planned for the end of this year, beginning of next year, is around 3,000 square meters. We are looking for applications in the medium, big volume scale, because of course we haven't got the capillary distribution right now, but maybe this is something we can talk with the people here afterwards. But the idea is that, for example, we are talking about land. Land is not infinite in India neither, right? You have the most highest density of population in the world. So maybe instead of putting hundreds of square kilometers of solar, maybe do a greenhouse where you can put solar and also produce some food underneath would also be something very viable, right? Because you can use that electricity to do the irrigation, to keep the humidity at the right level. Then, of course, warehouses, of course, cooling, storage. You also don't want that when you have to cool so much inside, everything gets wasted. So there are many things that we can talk about. We are, of course, looking for other collaborations, looking for pilots in other places, okay? And at the level of channel partners, supply chain, our concept, we bring our expertise, our technology here to the country. That's why we're doing the operations here. But of course, we are going to have a good part of the sourcing done here because we are not selling Swiss watches, so it's going to be a little bit tough to sell those here in India, especially in such a price and capex sensitive situation. And on top of that, as I was saying, we are accessing to the local resources. And finally, but because I heard it, we would love to participate and help in the regulations so that when things get done, they get done properly, so that also all this real estate and all this infrastructure value stays maintained, because that opens up so many other investing opportunities in real economy. And this is, I think, the most important take from that I can bring and that I could hear, and where we can see huge collaboration opportunities. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your perspective. Now quickly I will give some comments and then open the house for questions. Mr. Kumar from BSES had raised about the compactness and small sizes. Definitely the residential sector has yet to pick up. And many efforts have been made. In fact, when we were in Solar Energy Corporation, we wanted to even put a condition that 25% of the capacity you must do for less than 10 kilowatt system. And there was a kind of penalty as well, that subsidy will not be available if you're not doing it. But we found that many a times people were not even doing, and they were forfeiting their, whatever the earnest money was there. But nevertheless, this is an area which is emerging. A lot of new innovations and new practices are getting introduced. Gautam was talking about the use of roof. This is again very interesting, and as he had said about raising the roof. Definitely raising the roof or the structure for putting the panel has a cost involved. In SECI, when we were doing this program of rooftop, and IIT Chennai, they wanted the roof to be used, and we had to, this was not the provision in our project, but then they were ready to pay the additional cost, which was that time 25 to 30% higher for a raised structure. But this was done. So, and even in case of structure, there is, as you said, that people want to make use of roof. And if you do some structure or something on the roof, you feel that you are cased, because for next 25 years, you will not be able to use. But again, the people have come out with some kind of modular things, where you can just put the structure or the panel and put some weight, and all of them can be removed. I've seen in Germany many of those small little systems. So the industry is listening to the demand of the customer, and as Mr. Gautam was saying, we have to also interact very closely with customers, which is very important. And we have to address the challenges that are there. Which means, and then when you start doing raised structure, then how to optimize, how to minimize the cost, whether you can use other materials than steel. When you were talking about this, quality, and I also personally saw 2 installations. I will not name the manufacturer, but it is not right. But they were all leading ones. But in the same area, same size, one project I saw, which was good on structuring part. Of course, they had not used the steel structure. It was aluminum structure. And there was no foundation. It was some kind of paste on which they were just putting the aluminum structure. And it was sound enough or good enough to take the wind speed. But the other part was how you are putting the whole alignment, leveling, and how you are moving even the cable to the right panel. Sizing is very important, what kind of cable you are using. People sometimes go for cheap solution, but then they don't realize that in the long run they will be losing, or they will be losing on the life cycle benefits that you can derive when you are going for quality. And I will tell you that 1 versus 2, I'm not saying, but on one side, they were taking care of all aspects: structure, alignment, leveling, and cable, how the cable tray is laid, how it is going to the, and even the connectors. Connectors are also very important. There are connectors which are 80 rupees connector you will have, and 800 rupees connector also is available in market, 10 times. Then people will really think, okay, because they are taking some, do it and go away, because you are just, and many times the developers will have this tendency to just get their money and go away, because O&M is sometimes, many a times we are not able to really make a very important element of our, say, order, purchase order, or the contract. So it is very important that, and I saw the comparison between the two. One was giving 15 to 20% more energy yield just because of all these small aspects were taken care of. Means it was proper engineering, proper design, proper shadow analysis, and then you were able to do it. So what we are trying to emphasize is quality has to be given, and that's where the best practices come, that what is happening. You were mentioning about that micro crack will not be able, because you are taking care of the packaging, the transportation, and how the panels are handled, which many a times are ignored in case of India. We are doing large utility projects where the laborers are not aware how to handle those panels. Or even sometimes the road conditions are not good. The packaging is not good. And you will not be able to see through the cracks, because these are so minor hair cracks, but it impacts the output or yield of the system. Moreover, when we look at cleaning part, he was also mentioning about cleaning part. Again, it's, water is a scarcity. We cannot use water. So how to optimize on water so that we are not wasting water when we are cleaning? What would be the frequency will depend on how much dirt. If the Badarpur plant is running, the dirt will be much more. But if it is not running, so the frequency will change. But these are challenges, but these are opportunities as well. Because then there could be companies who are just into the cleaning business of panels. They have the system with them, vacuum cleaners or some, and they are, getting into some kind of contract, and then they regularly go and clean, which will be helping. Because everything you cannot do yourself. Something has to be outsourced. So this is a business. I have yet to see such companies who are just into the cleaning of panel. But I believe this is also an emerging area which can take place. Now about, you're saying that the small roofs, of course, because if it has to have 40 gigawatt, we must use all sizes of roofs. And unless there is a public revolution, people go for it, compact system and with battery backup, I would surely supplement your point. We must have, Tesla has come out with very good products, which looks very nice, and also, you have this. So we can definitely think, but assessment has been done in Delhi long back. And the total assessment for Delhi is 2000 megawatt. With all this, and it was power grid, and some organizations have done it. So please have a look. Of course, we can first target big buildings also, and have to find out how we can do it. Then, as you say, potential assessment is also very important, which means a lot of thought has to be given. One is where you can use remote sensing data. There was a case in Chandigarh. Chandigarh is a city which is a solar city. And then they used this satellite images, Google Maps, to assess the roof, what is the potential. So it gave you a ballpark figure. Of course, when you go and actually start setting up a project, then a detailed engineering design has to be done for that particular roof. But still to have a global kind of assessment that what this will be. And as International Solar Alliance and we are trying to do in many countries, we would like this kind of assessment, at least preliminary assessment to have, and take and encourage the cities to take up the rooftop program. Now, about banking, because sometimes, they are not ready to put money. So whether there is a system where EMI is there, and here again innovation will be required. And when we are talking of, that's why I said, when this session is best practices, means best practices in all aspects. So even the financing side, we have to see what kind of innovation we can bring. I will like to share one, although I don't know whether it is really getting its objective filled. But World Bank came out with a 650 million US dollar line of credit for State Bank of India. And it was targeted for the rooftop. And they are working on this. Of course, the initial thrust had been, again, because the bankers are averse to risk. So they will go for the bigger roofs, the bigger players, those who are having money. But then ultimately this concessional interest rate funding is targeted for general public as well. It is for the residential sector, which is not happening. So we'll have to bring some kind of tweaking in their program to see that the residential sector also picks up. But then there are huge opportunities on the warehouse, on airports, on railway stations, Delhi Metro. We have been a part of that story growing up, and it can go forward. Then one more thing about the cleaning part I will just like to share, because this is what we have learned, and it takes time. Some good examples are there. I am not trying to promote or project any company. I am talking about the process. For example, when we talk about the dust and cleaning, there are some nanotechnology available, some kind of chemical, which when you paste on the panels, then it doesn't attract dust as much. There was a technology provider from Netherlands who came out with this, and they said that, okay, we want to do it. Again, in India, there is a lot of bureaucratic process, but we tried to push it. We said, okay, what you do, there was a plant where 20 kilowatt was installed. We said, you put on 10 kilowatt system, and other 10 kilowatt remain without paste. And we will compare the two. And over the period, and we will see that really what you are claiming, that it is attracting less dust and it is giving more yield, we will have to have this. And I am happy to share with you that it was really 9 to 10% more energy yield where we had put this paste. And it was on a government project. Now, what was needed was to validate it through a third party, and that is what they are in process. But these practices are to be known to people, and always we will have to see the cost benefit. If I put that paste, whether I am really getting the return over a period of time. And about cleaning also, we have seen many robotic cleaning also has come. I don't know about the rooftop, maybe for the large rooftop, where it is, say, 1 megawatt, and I'm very happy to share with you, perhaps the second largest in the world is in India. It is more than 20 megawatt in one single roof. And very recently, Gale has come out with a 5 megawatt roof, which is the SECI's largest rooftop. So what I'm trying to say, when you are having so many of panels to be cleaned, then you can also use automation. But at least I am, for the Indian sector, I am not very keen on automation, because we have a lot of people and a lot of employment issues. So let us use the manpower to get it cleaned, and they can always do it better than the robots. So this part is there. And well, about skill building and capacity building, it is very important. National Institute of Solar Energy are running Surya Mitra program, which is that is targeting about 40,000 skilled fitters, mechanics for rooftop. Because you see, one thing is you learn from somebody, but many a times they are not having the right tool, the right kind of safety equipments, how they have to handle, how they have to really install. All these are small little things, but they have a very big impact on the profitability and of the rooftop. He was sharing about some project which was more than 30 years and still giving 70% of the yield. And of course, this was an old kind of system. And so this gives a lot of confidence, because many people will ask, whether it will really work for 20 years or 25 years. I have personally seen Intersolar Munich every year it takes place. We had gone there. 1 megawatt system was running, I had gone in 2016, and it was running for 16 years, and hardly 1 or 2 panels had to be changed. But otherwise, it was giving almost 90% of the yield what was in the 16 years back. So all this is very reliable. I mean, but the thing is, how you are installing it, what are the kind of precautions you are taking, and how you are also doing the preventive maintenance. Because you have to see in between also. You have installed and then forgotten. It cannot be. So there has to be some kind of periodic checks. There are some innovations here as well. Mahindra Sustain have come out with some mobile kind of system where you can take the mobile lab and they can test your system. And I believe it is for utility scale project, but it can also be for the larger rooftop systems. So thank you very much for having a patient hearing. And if there are any questions, maybe 2 questions at most, then we can.
We take the questions to the lobby because we will have the award, so we're actually a little bit.
Okay, then, so should we close the session?
Then we could take the questions probably in the lobby if you want to.
Okay. So thank you very much, and please give a big round of applause to the panelists for their intervention. Thank you very much.